see if more participants are joining. Because of some email communication, a lot of people joined much in advance, so that's great. So let's just give it another minute and then we can start. How we plan to do this is the first hour, the speakers will speak about their journey, their challenges, reflect on the practice. And then in the end, we have 30 minutes of Q&A built in where we will interact with everyone who's attending and take questions and just engage with the idea of women, leisure, and city spaces. So let's just start in another minute. Meanwhile, if all of you would like to introduce yourselves in the chat, just tell us who you are and where are you joining us from. That'll also give us a sense of who all are joining and what's the breadth of participation today. So just feel free to drop in the chat with your name and where are you joining in from today. Okay, so we're at 7:32. Where should we begin? Yeah, because we only have 90 minutes, little under 90 minutes now with us. So again, a very, very warm welcome to everyone here today. Maybe we can stop sharing the image now so that we can see the speakers. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so I'm Mahima. I've been thinking and writing about women's right to the city and right to leisure since almost a decade now. And I'm very excited that we have had this opportunity to put this conversation together. I'm also part of Women Walk at Midnight, and it's on behalf of Women Walk at Midnight that I put this conversation together today. So just some ground rules. It's a safe space. So we are all here to listen with patience and curiosity. Questions are welcome. Feel free to drop them in the chat when the speakers are speaking, but also at the end in the last 30 minutes, we'd encourage you to unmute yourself and voice over your questions and engage with the speakers. When the speakers are speaking, would be great if everyone could keep their audio off so that there is no audio disturbance. Yeah, so those are about the ground rules more in the chat. You can already see that. What we are here to talk about today, we are here to talk about women's leisure, women's access to leisure and access to public spaces in cities. It's something that's very close to my heart and close to every speaker's heart, and I'm sure a lot of the heart of the participants today. Women have been claiming public spaces and public spaces for leisure for more than 10, 15 years now in the Indian context, at least. Be it blank noise efforts like Meet to Sleep, which calls women to take a nap in open skies, while Loiter campaign, which is about loitering in city spaces at all times of the day and night, and claiming a stake to leisure through antaksharis and picnics, or be Women Walk at Midnight, which is particularly about women walking at midnight in different neighborhoods. And then there's so much happening beyond us. There's Girls at Dhabas, there were Take Back the Night Walks, there was Pinjara Tod, and I think we've been in the Indian women's movement, we've been in that space of talking about leisure and women's access to public spaces for a while now. And while we're all doing similar things, our tactics vary, our starting points vary. We might be facing similar challenges, we might be facing unique challenges. And I think just to talk about all of that today and to find those intersections and challenges and synergies together is why we thought of hosting such a talk today. And to tell us more about all of this and talk about all of this, we have with us today Neha, Singh, Jasmeen, Patheja, and Mallika, Taneja. And you can read their detailed bios in the chat to know more about them and all the fantastic work all of them have been doing. So now, without taking more time, I want to hand it over to the speakers. And Neha, why don't you go first? And just to quickly tell everyone, Neha is a Mumbai-based theatre practitioner. She started loitering in 2014 after being inspired by the book, and the campaign is in its ninth year now. So yeah, over to you, Neha. Tell us about the journey, its pleasures, and where are you now with the journey?
Thank you, Mahima. So I won't take much time. So I read this book called Why Loiter, which I think all of you must read if you haven't already, in 2014. And it basically said that, women access public spaces differently from men. And we're always kind of justifying why we're outside. And if there is no purpose to why we're outside, we should rather be indoors. And basically, the book said that to change the scenario, to change the way women access public spaces, we all must come out and loiter. Loitering means accessing public spaces which are free and open for all without any purpose. So basically, doing nothing outside. So that book really spoke to me. And after reading that book, it was like a personal journey for me actually, to just go outside and explore, public spaces, public parks, pavements, chai tapris, which I never explored alone. And it just so happened that it kind of became a campaign, because I had never really thought that it would become anything more than just me loitering. But the only thing that I did was that I took photos and I put them up on social media, and I hashtagged it while loiter. And soon there was, a lot of women friends saying, "Oh, this looks so exciting. We want to join you." So it became a campaign, which, then I started doing weekly, and lots of women joined me. And then we, everybody had different ideas. Somebody said, "Oh, I've never loitered, at night. I really want to do that." So then we started doing night loiterings. Somebody said, "I've never cycled in the city after growing up. I used to do it as a child." Somebody said, "I haven't really lay down and looked at the sky in a public park." So we did that. We played board games. We got on the metro and played Antakshari. Then we called men to join us in what is traditionally called women's clothing. So we did all kinds of things, and it just kept growing and growing, and it kind of just never stopped. So now it's been 9 years of that, and every year it's like something new. Somebody comes up with an idea of how to explore public spaces, and we keep incorporating those new ideas, and we just keep moving ahead with it.
Thank you, Neha. And that's the thing, right? That we find, because our experiences are so similar as women living in Indian cities, that we find resonances with similar uh, initiatives or efforts to sort of change our experience. And it's something that in the academic circle has been written about also, that why certain moments and certain protests gain that energy because of that collective resonance. So thank you for sharing that, and we'll talk. I would love to talk a bit more about the challenges and some going deeper in some of the experiences. But before we do that, let's also hear from Mallika, who has been walking at night in Delhi, on the streets of Delhi, since 2016 as well. So Mallika, why would you like to come in now and share a bit?
Yeah, thanks, Mahima. I resonate so much with what Neha has said. I'm sorry to keep looking distracted, but actually, I'm also on another computer in which I'm admitting people. Oh, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do it.
I am doing it, Mallika. You can just,
Okay, okay.
focus on that. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, no problem.
this is this is this is story of my life. Okay. I resonate deeply with what Neha has said. This thing about not wanting to actually create any sort of a campaign, not wanting to just starting doing something because you just wanted to. Uh, I started also as a very solo sort of journey, and I started from different starting point. I was incredibly interested in endurance and fatigue as lived experiences, especially of women, especially in feminist movements and struggles, and especially as beings who are fighting the good fight, as it were. And I think this pivotal moment that you speak about, Mahima, there are these moments that happen. And for me, that moment was the 2012 Delhi gang rape and murder. This changed everything for so many of us, and especially for me. We are coming upon the 11th year of that day. I've noticed how over the years this day has changed for so many people, how a lot of people don't have that kind of feeling towards it, but I do still, and I think a lot of us do. And I happened to watch on the 31st of December 2012, I happened to be on a protest walk from JNU to Munirka, and I happened to watch Maya Krishna Rao's theatre work, Walk. And this for me was a war cry. What she did that day, that night, past midnight, she said, at 1 a.m., at 2 a.m., raat ke 3 baje, we will walk. And I echoed with that so much because I was thinking about fatigue, I was thinking about exhaustion, I was thinking about all of these things, and we were in this moment that was unprecedented, at least for me in my life, that this became the thing to do, to walk at night, to walk at 3 a.m., to walk at 1 and 2, and that we will walk. And that's how this kind of like moved inside me and came out. I was preparing for a 24-hour walk in the city, a 24-hour lone walk in the city. And when I was practicing, in the practicing of this walk came the night, and it was impossible, very practically impossible for me to walk at night to practice my 24-hour walk. And then we had to walk collectively, and one thing led to another, and it became a women's space. And then it became a space, a thing that now we do every month and in different cities. It has chapters and whatnot. Sometimes I feel it's way more than I can manage, but here we are.
Thank you, Mallika. And I'm sorry I missed reading out some of your bio, but just to tell everyone here, Mallika is a theatre artist, lives and works out of Delhi. And in her performances and works, she deals with questions of gender, solidarity, silence, and memory. And like you heard about endurance, about women's experiences as well. And thank you, Mallika, for sharing that. And it's a good note to end on, that sometimes it's not easy. It becomes a lot. And with that, I would like to now go to Jasmeen, who started Blank Noise 20 years ago. So been in it for a long, long time. So just to tell everyone briefly about Jasmeen. Jasmeen Patheja is an artist in public service committed to ending violence against women, girls, and all persons. She facilitates ideas and collective action towards right to be defenseless, and is currently an artist in residence at the Shrishti Manipal Institute of Art, Design and Technology in Bangalore. So over to you, Jasmeen, to share your experience of Meet to Sleep in particular, which I think finds a lot of resonance in some of the things that we've talked about so far. So over to you, Jasmeen.
Thanks, Mahima and Mallika and Neha, and hello to everyone. It would be hard for me to speak about Meet to Sleep without the background a little bit to Blank Noise. Because I mean, I see Blank Noise as it's been a collective. It's been built by many what we call action heroes and theros since 2003, because we believe that every human being has the ability and potential to create a safe space. So what is that? How do we invite in? How do we call in? Blank Noise also started in response to street harassment, which didn't really have much of a vocabulary or a shared understanding. It was being dismissed as just teasing. And as an artist, or as an art student then, I was really concerned with questions around who is art for, where should art be, and the role of art in triggering public conversation and the potential of art to heal. So I think, and these lived experiences, both collectively of street harassment and not having a community to take them to, resulted in Blank Noise. And it started as a college project. It started as a college project with about first 9 action sheroes. And I'd say over the 20 years, if I were to really kind of sum it up very, very quickly, I would say it's been a laboratory of ideas that come from community listening. We work towards building a capacity to be listeners. We create, it rests on speaking about violence if it serves us. And again, I'm speaking all of this now, but it's been also an iteration of language from saying, let's speak about street harassment, let's speak about victim blame, to how do we speak if it serves us, and do we have listeners? And so listening also propels us to asking, what do we believe we deserve? What is how do we facilitate a collective imagination? So way before sleeping, we were learning to stand still. In 2005, we were standing in public spaces and becoming action sheroes and challenging all these lessons about get home as fast as you can, look down and walk, to standing still and making eye contact. Or in 2012, we were forming a neighborhood pilot project called the Ha 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 Sangha, where we were gathering as women in a neighborhood and just laughing out loud. And it was very much like a laughter club, but with the whole premise to occupy and to really release through the body. Or walking alone and forming this network where Loiter has been a constant ally in walking alone together. And then gradually to sleep. So every idea rests on people taking it up and going beyond participation to a sense of, like from bhagdari to hissedari, and how do we really make it our own? So that's where the facilitation lies. And that's really what brings me to Meet to Sleep as well. And I know that later we are talking about what is solidarity, because these are the questions that really drive Meet to Sleep. That if it's been a set of ideas from laughing, walking, sleeping, or just setting new rules for our engagement and our bodies and ourselves, who does this idea speak to and how do you make it your own? So just to quickly speak about Meet to Sleep, it emerged actually in 2007 when we created this wish list that we wanted for our city. And a lot of Blank Noise was a digital community then, and today it's much more, resting on how do we build feminist alliances and work with different groups and that work with different communities of women and girls and non-binary persons. So that's where we are at right now. But in 2007, we had this wish list on our blog, the Blank Noise blog back then. And we invited women to send their wishes for the city. And we were so struck, just like Neha said, we were struck by how simple these wishes were. I wish I could get wet in the rain and not worry about my clothes being wet and people staring at me. I wish I could wear that red lipstick. And that year, I took the liberty to also not just facilitate, but participate. And I said, I wish to sleep. I went to Bangalore's Cubbon Park to sleep the following year. And I was in the company of other fellow action sheroes, somebody, Saraswati, who dared herself by sitting alone on a bench and stretching and pouting. And somebody else, Soumya, who said, I'm going to sit alone under a tree. And as I was trying to sleep, I was not able to sleep. And I was awake with every sound and realizing it's just grass, it's just a dog. And I became very aware of the fear that I had in my body in that moment. And it became a moment or an opportunity to talk to fear. And I just lay there thinking about how all of us, each one of us in this room, has been raised to be careful and to be careful, right? And so this narrative of fear really controls us, and that there are more of us in fear of each other than with the intention to harm each other. And I kind of lay there visualizing, what would happen if thousands of women were sleeping for leisure in public spaces where we were defenseless in our bodies. What would happen to our bodies to do that? And what would happen to the public space itself to experience that? So I'll close with that, but maybe just add some years later, like 7 years later, Meet to Sleep is an idea and a movement that has been built in alliance with several groups including Loiter, where we gather, we respond to an idea, and we take it forward. And yeah, so we can talk about that later. But this is kind of the journey of the right to be defenseless when being with threat is so normal, is what we're all raised to become.
Thank you, Jasmeen. And I think just what I am taking away when listening to each of you is how the specific action that we are talking about today is also forms part of a larger ambit of our work and what we are trying to do. This idea of navigating fear, this idea of claiming fun and leisure, this idea of putting our bodies out there in city spaces in all its forms and functions. And I think that's where sort of the synergies and intersections start coming out between these movements. But so first, I think I would first like to pause here and see if any of the speakers would like to ask a question of each other before we get into this whole question of challenges. What are the challenges that we all face when building long-term collectives? Okay, so go ahead, Jasmeen.
Yeah, I'd love to know what role you occupy in your work, in your movement. Or do you call it a movement? Do you call it a campaign? And what role do you occupy in that place? And how do you step into that? Something that keeps changing for me. Yeah. Well, not so much now, but yeah.
Go ahead. Anyone, whoever wants to. Neha, go ahead.
I think my role in the Loiter campaign is that I started loitering alone and a lot of women joined in, and I've kind of always hoped that it kind of sustains on its own even when I'm not there. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, and I have to like keep pushing it from time to time. And I play the role of kind of like this big sister who's like, okay, now you say which route should we take, or you come up with some idea, or why don't you design the poster this time, or let's all gather around your area. So it's also a challenge sometimes that I feel like I wish that it would just go on without me, at least in Mumbai. It does, it has chapters where it's happening on its own, and that's amazing. But sustainability, I feel, is something that I have to constantly uh, be aware of. And I think that's the role that I'm like this gadha, basically, who has to constantly, keep going forward. And even sometimes when nobody shows up, it's like, no, it's good, it's all good, it's all good. So that kind of a role of like constantly making sure that it's going on and on.
When this first started, listening to you all, I'm also feeling that okay, it's not so bad. Also, that this practice, even though 2016 sounds like it was 100 years ago, it's an infant. So I'm feeling a bit less taken by all of this. When I first started to walk, I had a lot of fun. And I had a lot of fun because I honestly always had a drink in my bag. I always had people with me. And we used to swig and walk in the winter, in the summer. It was a far more carefree thing for me. But ever since it has become a thing, I've become an organizer. And actually, I must admit that I never wanted to make it a thing. Other people saw potential in this and that, and they wanted to make it a thing, and they walked with me a while, and then they went on with their lives. And now I have this thing to run. And I really resonate with you, Neha, because it is also a choice. It is a choice to not run it like an institution or an organization. It is a choice to not have funding for it in a certain way. It is a choice I mean, now I have a website. It is a choice. All of these things are choice to let something breathe and be and evolve and grow in as organic a way as possible, in as light-footed a way possible, in which I am not the most important person, but unfortunately, I keep becoming it. And I don't like this, but I also now have started accepting it, because every time, no matter organizer or not, every time we go on a walk and I come back home, I'm happy. I feel like, yeah. And really, Neha, I can't tell you, like, it's really the same. It's gadha mazduri. It's constantly keeping your chin up, even when people don't show up, even when these people say they will do something and they don't, because a lot of this happens. A lot of this happens. And yet you carry on because it's some hardcore belief inside and a stubbornness that this ye to karna hai.
I just want to add something to that. So each time now that it's been 9 years, and I feel like I have like 10 other things that I need to do to earn money.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this and not prioritizing that. And then and there's a rule of half. So if 20 people have said they will come, 10 will come.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yes.
Rule of half. So if 4 people have said they will come, 2 people will come. But each time that happens and you feel a little, like less motivated, like I did so much and then only 2 people showed up, I always try to go back to that first day when I went out loitering alone and I wanted to change something inside me for that little girl who grew up with all that conditioning and who was told that, whatever happened to you is your fault, your fault, your fault. And how elated I was when I just came back all alone also. So I always try to go back to that first day, and that somehow keeps the energy going.
Sorry, may I just add one little thing about this thing about the organizer, which became like a burden. In a city like Delhi, it became as if we were the ones hanging around till everybody got an auto. Then nobody was hanging around for us for our auto, and I was like, "Yeah, ye kab ho gaya ki my body suddenly is not at the same risk as your body on the street at night in Delhi? How is this possible?" So this had to be understood, and actually these things happen when it becomes a thing.
Jasmeen, do you want to share on the same question directed to you about the space you
I should
how
think
you
of which
occupy the space? Yeah.
Now I should think of which question's coming right back at me. But no, I also resonate so much with what both Mallika and Neha have shared around organizing, spontaneity, doing it lightly, but also saying how else. I feel like for me, the whole year has been about how else. But in terms of the role I occupy, is that of a facilitator, facilitating listening, facilitating different conversations, provoking thought, sitting with discomfort, but I also want to just respond to what they both shared, what both of you shared around this feeling demotivated and this kind of being neat and stubborn around just showing up each time. And it's a challenge because sometimes if, like, let's say 8 people have come, it's a conscious decision in that moment to say, I'm here with the 8, or where is everybody else? And so I know that for the 8 who are here, they're really here. They really, really want to be here, and they've braved Bangalore traffic and come, or something else and come. So it's also that how I choose in that moment, and sometimes with a lot of struggle, to just focus on who is present, and I have hope in the momentum building and the repetition, because when we were doing these actions on standing idle, it would be that 3 people would show up, 1 person would show up. And there were chapters for Blank Noise back then in different cities, and they were all citizen-led and citizen-formed, and they all had their life. And now it's a different kind of organizing. But there would be suddenly one person from Patna saying, I want to do it, and it would be her doing it alone. So I'm just saying it's okay. And I also understand that I also know that it's a lot of self-conversation in those moments as well. And it's tiring also, and it's inspiring also. And I just have to focus on the ones who were really there. And yeah, and I guess that's what I return to. In terms of the role, I think my role is that of facilitating. And I enjoy that a lot. I love it when we challenge ourselves and find ways to challenge without having to call out, but call in and gently approach discomfort is what I love. And yeah, that's what I do.
Hmm.
Oh, and one more thing, sorry. And just like, Neha spoke about, yeah, somebody else taking the role. I noticed that when life happens, right? Like we are all living our lives as we are intersecting with, as we are also living our practice. And so life happens, and sometimes you can't give the same amount of energy. But I noticed that it didn't die down, right? Like, because it's still been about people and their lives and showing up with their fears and this desire to confront fear or in shared resistance together. So it doesn't die. It is very much part of somebody's lived experience. And so even when, 10 years ago, when I wasn't fully around for a year, I realized that it didn't die. It just had a different path and it had a different pace. So I find that also very comforting. Yeah.
Thank you, Jasmeen. And what I hear from all of you is this idea of zid and conviction in what we are doing, right? And so even though other people who are in this journey with you might come in and go out, you all hold on to that zid and that conviction, and that's how the practice gets held and sort of sustains itself. But also coming back to this question of the labor that goes into it, into something that is long term, that is not a reactive campaign, that is not about mass mobilization, that इकट्ठा करना है लोगों को, एक statement करना है and it's done and dusted. It's very iterative, it's slow, and that is why it's also long term. How do you sustain this? What are your tactics of dealing with this challenge also? So whoever wants to come into that.
I think with Loiter, we try to do different kinds of things. Because in the beginning, we were mostly just, occupying public parks and just sitting there or lying down there. But then a lot of new ideas kept coming in from participants. Let's do midnight loitering, let's do cycling, let's sing, let's dance, let's play board games, all kinds of, let's go to a chai tapri. So we just incorporated those, let's do some book reading in a public space. So it's also fun to keep doing different activities, getting on the last local train, getting on the last bus, getting into the metro. So you're occupying like different kinds of public spaces and public transport. And so each experience becomes a little different from the previous one. And it's also fun. And it's also, you feel a bit nervous doing something new. And then you're like, oh, we did it. Like the cycling bit, I think there were about 10 participants who wanted to cycle, and they all wanted women's cycles, like without the danda. And none of them had cycles of their own. So we really had to struggle to rent 10 women's cycles, because all the cycle shops in Mumbai only rented out men's cycles, like with the danda. And then we found like this one shop, in Kolaba, where we got like women's cycles, and they were charging more because they were like, these are women's cycles. So we really had to negotiate. And then when we were getting on the cycles, some of us were falling off because we were cycling after so long. And then even the traffic cop is like, "Kyun kar rahe ho cycle jab aata nahi hai chalana to?" So like it's fun to try out different things, and I think it also keeps the sustainability factor going.
And I think it also somewhere speaks to the idea that something Jasmeen said of building ownership, moving from participation to ownership. By collecting ideas, you move towards that also. And something that Blank Noise does by, I think, you encouraging action sheroes to take ownership. And Jasmeen can speak more to that also about
Yeah,
how
so basically whoever suggests a new idea then I make sure that that person is involved in the organizing of that particular session. And then even if they get busy in their lives and then they know that another one of those session is coming up, then they'll come for that because they started it. So in that way also there's ownership, like what you said.
Mallika, Jasmeen, would you like to come in and share something on this or another challenge that you've faced or tactics to deal with those challenges?
एक्चुअली बहुत बार सवाल ये होता है कि इससे होगा क्या, क्या होगा, क्यों रात को जा रहे हो, इससे क्या होगा, क्योंकि तुम तो बैनर भी नहीं ले जाते हो, तुम तो नारा भी नहीं लगा रहे हो, तो इससे होगा क्या, what is the point of this? And here I think the fact that I do theater for a living helps, because the same question is asked of theater, इससे होगा क्या, कि कोई गाना गाने से होगा क्या, इससे थोड़ी ना दुनिया बदलती है, दुनिया किसी और चीज से बदलती है, ये बार बार बोला जाता है that something else in the world is changing the world. I don't know what that is. The life that I live, a song changes the world, a play changes the world, a walk changes the world, and this is my firm, unshakable belief. This is what I lead with. This is my life. ठीक है ना? And I know there are several like me who resonate with this. That's why, like Jasmeen said, it doesn't die. You can keep trying. We can try to kill it, but it won't die, because this is the stuff that makes the change in the world. This is the stuff that makes the change go around. So this is a form of love, no? It's a form of loving yourself, of loving each other, of loving where you live. It is a form of that. So when you have that kind of a conviction, and I'm sure that Neha walks into this with this kind of conviction, Jasmeen walks into it with this kind of conviction. They, of course, they articulate it in their ways, but it is this belief that actually sustains it. Everything else is detail. Then you say, okay, I'm going to be stubborn and I'm going to do one. No matter what, once a month, I'm going to do it. And you say, you keep doing it, and suddenly you see, oh, there is a loose community around. And yeah, you know, Nabiha, she came for the 12-hour walk and now she's still coming 3 years later. And you know, Aishwarya, she came for the Vasant Kunj walks. Oh, she's also come for the Jamia walks. And you know, things like this, they keep happening, and you notice it slowly. And the key is to understand that it is not going to form in front of us as it is expected to form in front of us. So it won't show up like the story you tell at the end of a movement, like the film that they make about the movement. It's not going to show up like that. This is how it happens, you know. And if it's hard, but that is the sustainability of it.
And that's the thing, as Shalu in chat has said, is that even if it changes my world, it has still changed the world. And to share like a personal anecdote, I was coming back from work and I had to catch a cab at 2 a.m. from the airport, and my boss, who's a 60-year-old woman, said, "Oh, is it safe? How will you go back?" And I said, "Listen, I walk with women walk at midnight. I know what night looks like. This is not the first time I'm seeing the night." And for that matter, because I've slept with Me to Sleep earlier, I am okay with letting my guard down in a park because I've done that and I've seen that it's okay, it's joyful. And I think that is what it is, right? For a lot of people just doing this, how it changes their own experience, bodily fear that we have sort of relaxes. But yes, that is a question that stands. Why this? And also what to call it. Jasmeen said this in the beginning, right? Kya hai ye? Is it a collective? Is it a movement? Is it a campaign? Is it a protest? What is it? And as someone writing about it academically, I wrote a 10-pager on what to call it and where can I draw from calling and categorizing some things like this. Jasmeen, you unmuted. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mahima. Yeah, I think that there's so many resonances from this form of protest and kya badlega. And I remember again, when people just stand idle, there were always these questions like, but now you must hold a placard because how will people understand what's happening? And we're like, no, let's just experience this in our bodies. And so it was offering or working through a new language, I think, in terms of how a place experienced it without being told this is what we're doing, but they were just experiencing and they just were responding. So it was disrupting something in that moment. And that continues, right? Like there's always a conversation often with even allies, like, should we put meat to sleep banners? Should we not put banners? What does it mean to put a banner down? And what does it mean to not also? So again, all of those interpretations and conversations are always welcome and fuzzy. And also one banner will make a claim. Otherwise, our bodies are claiming for themselves and that's enough. But so it varies, and we're learning through understanding every ally's experience along the way. But also this idea of labor and who's present, who's absent. I think that with every action, when let's say 8 people have come, yes, as I shared earlier, there is a focus of, oh, 8 are here, but the 8 are here. But I think in the larger scale, if I look at it as a movement and as a facilitator, I know that I'm not at rest because I'm always aware of who's not here in the larger sense of how, that this is the challenge is also the reality in terms of how big this issue is, how vast this issue is, how and how much there is to be done in a lifetime and beyond a lifetime. That reality of doing, like 20 years and being in my 40s to being in my 20s and like, oh, life is finite. And, that those things definitely hit me in my mid 40s. So I'm aware. And that I think that also becomes not a challenge, but a driver in terms of how else can be reorganized. Like, I don't see something like meat to sleep or any of the action that we're doing as something that cannot be quote unquote mass mobilized. Why not? Right? But what would it take to get there? And and also I also resonate with this idea of how do you work lightly and how do you hold something with lightness. And what is, I think blank noise is also a registered trust. But again, I had no imagination on what an artist-led organization when you've been, I'm at so much ease just running a collective of volunteers. Right now, suddenly those references are not there. So it's almost in a way of figuring it out, how to organize to meet the vision, or how to have the capacity to walk that talk and that dream. And so I think that's kind of where it's at. I see it as questions that drive next steps and one step at a time. And as much as, yeah, I'm aware of, and I think the invisibility is what propels determining next steps. And I think I might be rambling by now, but that's what I wanted to add. Oh yeah, one last thing about labor. That's the part. I don't always, because it's been different stages of labor, I would say, like in my 20s when blank noise was newer, younger, and we were all peers. We were all discovering an issue together. There was Annie, there was, Himangani, there was Chinmay, there was Abhishek, there were so many people, and we were all acting and discovering something like peers. And now there is a difference in the there are just there's a newer group of people. Somebody could be 16 and joining blank noise, and somebody could be older. So it's a different climate around organizing, and it demands a newer way of organizing too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with long-term initiatives, that it shifts with the rhythms of life and with our context and so much that happens around it. And I think with this thought, I also want to drive this conversation forward into what next? Where are we going from here? And I want you all to think of this question from two lenses. One is that of solidarity. How can we build solidarity between these collectives from here? And I know, like, for example, Blank Noise and Loiter sometimes collaborates, or if someone from Bombay reaches out to Women Walk, we tell them about Loiter. But going forward, how do we solidify or build on these opportunities for solidarity? And what's the vision? Where do we want to go from here? Um, so yeah, open question, whoever wants to take it.
मतलब मुझे तो लगता है कि अब जिद करी है तो करते ही रहेंगे. थोड़ा सा ऐसा भी लगता है कि what next means the next walk and the next walk and the next walk and the next city and the next city and the next city, because that's what it is. And if the vision, I don't if the dream is that until the day each one of us can walk alone at night, if that is the dream, then till then we walk. And it might sound a bit dreamy and out there, but actually I think like I am able to have this dream because women dared to dream before me, and their dreams got fulfilled, if not in their lifetimes, in the lifetimes after theirs. So I think we are all in the business of sowing seeds, the fruits of the trees of which and the fruits of which we won't get to see in our lifetimes, most probably, jaisa ki hota hai. But maybe one day. And I think many of us do a lot of things with the hope of that one day. Solidarity helps making the journey a little less alone, a little less chaotic, and a little less burdened by the labor that it takes. And it takes a ton of labor. I think Dadha Mazduri is the only way I can describe it. And I've noticed that, you see so many women in the feminist movement burning out. And it's the same reason. It's the zid, and it is a certain, maybe it is an overachieving or something like that, but it is this belief with which you keep going at it. And we also don't know how to stop or pause or rest. So perhaps the solidarity helps us to pause and rest and say, okay, while I am not doing it, Neha is still loitering. It's fine. And if Neha is not loitering, Mallika is still walking. And if, Mallika and Neha have stopped, Jasmeen is still doing something. So वो चक्का चले जा रहा है कहीं ना कहीं. ये ऐसे इतनी आसानी से मर नहीं जाएगा और ना ही बुझ जाएगा. Maybe solidarity helps with this. This kind of a conversation is an act of solidarity. Just listening to each other and learning from each other and knowing that actually it's the same. It makes you feel less lonely. And hopefully people listening understand a little deeper into what it takes to do something like this. Maybe they want to do their own things. Maybe they want to join forces. Maybe they want to sleep. Maybe they want to walk. Maybe they want to loiter, And I think these are the things that help us carry on. It is my wish that we talk more often. And I think those of us who are in the same boat, don't think of each other as competition, because I think that happens very much. This happens very much. But solidarity is a space in which we are in it together. And then there's only one way to go from there, and that is forward.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Mallika, because I feel like once the seed is planted, like once you've walked in the night, or once you've slept in the park, or once you've gone out loitering, that seed is planted inside you. So whether you are loitering with the group or in the session or just on your own, wherever you are, questioning everything basically, you are carrying the campaign forward, you are carrying the movement forward. And I feel like when we have our sessions, it's more like we're all just coming together to really just talk and discuss like how we have been loitering in our daily lives, between the sessions. But the loitering becomes like a constant process. The questioning of everything that's happening in public spaces becomes a constant process once you've come out for any of these sessions. Like what you said, Mahima, that you were taking the cab home, and you said that no, I've been for the walk at night and I know how it feels and I'll manage. So once the seed is planted, it's never going to leave you. And like what Mallika said, that even if I'm not loitering, even for a year, if I'm not loitering, and I'm looking at the women walk at midnight page, and I'm like, okay, they're doing it in Delhi, they're doing it in this city, that city, that city. We're all one, basically. We call it different names, but we are all doing the same thing. And this whole thing of no banners, and no t-shirts that say why loiter, no caps and badges and bags that say why loiter, it's all part of the same ideology, that you don't need to have a banner, you don't need to have a t-shirt or a badge to be reclaiming public spaces. And it's something that you basically do every day of the rest of your life, and you are part of the movement.
And not take permission. I think that's also a very common factor in all of us, that we don't seek permission from any of the papas around.
Yeah, I think that it's also about like stepping back and saying and asking ourselves, all of us in this room actually, like what is the larger movement, and how are what each of us doing, not even individual, I mean not individually, but what are the different practices or different actions or the campaigns or the interventions, how are they contributing to the larger movement? What is the larger movement, and how does the act of all of these propel or strengthen the larger movement? And because it's beyond all of us, and that each of us are contributors for the larger movement of a body that's completely free and autonomous and fearless. And I don't know, I don't want to be the one defining that in this moment, but that each of us are contributors, and that each of these ideas that's a power cut, and I'm glad I'm connected through my phone instead. That each of us are larger than our ideas, and our ideas are larger than each of us. That's what I meant to say, and that and it takes, and sometimes I think that banners are great, like we've, to even work with banners as a form. So I'm not here to, and how do we, yeah. So sometimes we work with a traditional form. It's not been published, but we've been working with banners as a method, as a form. But yeah, how do we, I think the question of what is solidarity is also what's driving Meet to Sleep, for instance. Like how does it speak to you at Sadbhavna Trust in Lucknow? How does it speak to you at VAMP in Sangli? How does it speak to you at Why Loiter? Because that's the curiosity and what's driving this, because it is about what is the shared ground. And if there is a shared ground of violence, if I can dare to put it that way, across a spectrum, across our identities, can there also be a shared ground of resistance? And that itself is plural. So yeah, I think that, and solidarity is also like, what is a quick action of solidarity? But also solidarity is also about building relationships and not assuming it. And so, and that relationships take time. And But I think we could have like, what is a solidarity spectrum? What is at the very least like it, or disagree, but have the ability to have a difficult conversation with disagreement. For me, even that's solidarity, rather than cancel someone out or judge them, or just get to the heart of where someone's coming from. So yeah, and also to shine the light on what is missing. And I think that's all of those in all its I guess with its intention to strengthen something is for me solidarity. Strengthen what's to strengthen and highlight that something's missing here, or yeah, I'll stop now. But it's fuzzy, but good.
It does strengthen, and as a participant in the chat, Shruti has said that it also helps spread awareness and enable deeper conditioning beyond those who are actively able to participate. But also just the idea, Jasmeen, of what you said, that solidarity is a way to strengthen and to build on that strength and our strengths. And I was also, while each of you were talking, thinking about the unsaid solidarities that are there, that exist, and how each of us, each collective, is contributing to the larger movement and the feminist discourse and the feminist goals in so many ways. I have one more question, but before I sort of voice that, I want to invite the participants to, if you have any questions or if you want to think of questions, you can either put it down in a chat or you can raise your hand and then unmute and voice over your question. We are well within the last bit of this talk now. So if anyone has any questions, and while we wait, and I want to ask, sort of float this another question for anyone to answer, is this idea, the another commonality that I sort of see between the three is this performative aspect of it. So it is shifting your own body experiences and inward looking, but it's also, when we say it's shifting something in the city, there is a performative aspect. And I see each of your broader work sort of contributing to this framing, as well as theater artists, as visual artists. So anyone would like to come in and just chat about that aspect?
So, a few years ago, there was this PhD student from the US who had come to study protest performances after the Jyoti Singh case. And she was also following Loiter. So I said, but Loiter is not a performance. So she said, but it is. So I was like, how? She said, because she said it's the most subliminal, interactive, and minimalistic performance ever, because you are pretending as if the world is the way that it should be, and you're acting like how people should be in a world that is ideal for women and for everybody, when it is not. So, and all the people who are looking at you, basically bystanders, shopkeepers, or anybody that's looking at you, is your audience, without them even realizing that they are an audience to a performance that's happening. So most of the times, even the performers, like the loiterers, are not aware that we are actually performing. Like when we do a meet to sleep, we are performing in a way that, nothing is going to happen and it's all great and this is how it should be and this is how things are in this world, when they're actually not. So yes, I completely agree with you that there is a performative quality to these sessions. And everybody who's looking at us is an audience, and you can actually see the reactions of the audience, as they should be in children and the other women who are looking at us, in the men, of course, like very vocal reactions. So yeah, and something changes in the people who are looking at us, and sometimes even talking to us and asking and engaging. And we always try to have conversations with people who are curious or even hostile or even aggressive. We try to have very positive and constructive conversations with them, because the idea is to involve and engage with as many people as we can.
I think because I do theater, I think my gaze on Women Walk at Midnight has forever been that, forever been. My lens has been that this is performance. Because there is an exchange of gaze. We gaze upon and we are gazed upon. And for the way I look at it, this is a performative space. For me, the moment of theater is when we exchange, when we share time and space, and we exchange a gaze, or we share a gaze. And I think with Women Walk at Midnight, this happens. There's a very clear beginning and end. We have a start and an end point and a time. So it's also a timed performance. It is placed in space very purposefully and very sharply. And it has a form. Women walk, like our walks have a form. And that, I think, is very, very important to understand, like how I see it. But I also know that a lot of people who enter the walks, they don't see it like this. And that's also fine. This is totally fine, So, and I also don't feel the need to say, oh, by the way, did you know? Because it's unimportant. It's my gaze on it. It's my lens to view the world. Actually, I feel like when I'm getting out of the, the moment I step out of the house, I feel a performance begins. Like I dress up for it, especially in a city like Delhi, where you decide whether to wear the dupatta or not wear the dupatta. What sort of gaze are you inviting on yourself or not? What are you gearing up for? What is your costume? What is your route? What is the time? What is your mode? You are constantly playing in a certain form. So I feel like life is only like this, but this is my lens on it. Which I don't believe that everybody needs to share, which doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Yeah. There are two things. One is, I just want to go back to that solidarity thing because it's still brewing, is like even when we do actions, what people share in the moment of building an action, again, whether it's standing idle and people would show up, but in that moment, there would be, it is performative because we are occupying a position as action sheroes, heroes. We're putting forward this intention. And in that process, we're also confronting something in ourselves that's a story of fear, but we're also confronting this fear-based relationship that we have been raised to have with our public spaces. But there is no, I don't use the word audience. I kind of include the space in a way to, for example, a response from men, especially cishet men on the streets back then. They were always waiting for something to happen, right? But but they were very much part of it rather than an audience. Like it was to because again, from the very beginning at Blank Noise, the idea was, that there's nobody outside of this issue. Either somebody's experienced it or somebody's unintentionally caused it or somebody's witnessed it. So it always worked with keeping all these aspects anywhere, whether it's the street or anywhere else. So yeah, but it is performative in whether we are occupying through laughter or through sleep or through and there are guidelines, of course, in each of these. And I also, in those moments of performativity, and I experience amongst persons present there as action sheroes or deros or heroes, there is solidarity in that moment. Like I'm not going to forget what Shruti said 3-4 years ago, that I built Meet to Sleep in Cubbon Park in 2016. I've come here again But in between, I've done this alone in Cubbon Park too. But I've come here this year so that somebody else can sleep because they know I'll be present for them. That is also solidarity, and that kind of care that person, that action Shiro offered. So yes, I'm just combining two questions in one. But yeah.
And that is beautiful. Like within collectives, I think there is always so much solidarity between people who participate, who experience it themselves. So in Women Walk, for example, there are so many people who then lead their own walks and take us to their neighborhoods because they have experienced it once, or they want to do that in their own neighborhood. And I'm sure, as Neha shared, so much of that happens in Loiter, where you ask people to take ownership of the idea that they are proposing to have fun. And
And just
also, Mhm.
sorry. I'll just
Sorry.
add like, example just now while organizing Meet to Sleep, Neha and I were back and forth, and just her sending that video, being in and out of various cities, and it was an act of solidarity that she took that time and made that video, and really, so in those moments there's the seed of friendship, there's a seed of repeating, recurring, showing up again, and yeah, so I experience solidarity in that. So it's a moment to also say thank you. Yeah, okay, now I'll stop.
It's also about making space, right? For each other in our we don't find time, I guess we make time also. And Mallika, about something that you were talking about, is Judith Butler has written about how gender is a performance, the performative aspect of gender itself, uh, for everyone. So yeah, I think those were my curiosities and questions. Over to the participants, if anyone wants to come in, ask a question, or even if any of you, the speakers, would like to ask each other anything that's unaddressed, or you want to talk about more. So we'll, I think, pause for a few seconds, sit in silence, and see if anyone wants to come in with a question. Please go ahead, Vishali. You can unmute yourself and switch on your video if you want.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, this was a very engaging discussion. Thank you for having this talk right here. My question to all the three speakers is, it's been quite a while since you started engaging with your respective campaigns and movements. Have you guys, or like, have you people, observed any sort of changes in public spaces, like not because of your efforts as such, but has anything organically changed and made public spaces more welcoming to women? What do you think about that?
Actually, I have noticed Delhi has become incredibly lit. There is so much light at night. If you ask me, it's more than there is than is needed. It's like this tube light lighting everywhere. And it is done to light dark corners and for safety and for this and that. So I do think there is an element of women feeling a more safety and comfort in movement, because even when we are doing our walks, when there is a dark patch, the panic that grips the body and how the breathing changes, it's the same. I mean, over the years, I mean, as I've grown older in the city, the time at which I feel comfortable in taking an auto back home has shifted. It's become from 8 p.m. to 11:30 or noon. I've, 11 midnight or whatever. All of these things have happened, but darkness, the panic this triggers in me, and not just in me, I'm sure with many, many other women, as we have discovered on our various chats, remains the same. And so this light has helped, but it has also killed the night completely in the city. There is no night. There is no sense of dark. And I think this also changes how a body experiences day and night, or how we absorb um, the night, and also what darkness means. Like, how do we build a relationship with darkness if there is no dark? I think about this, if it's all lit, then how do I engage with my difficulty?
Um, Actually, it's a very tough question whether I have seen any changes in public spaces ever since we started this campaign, because it's difficult to say whether the change is in the public space or whether the change is inside me. But I will say this, that I see, and they say Mumbai is the safest city in India, and I always say comparatively it's not 100% safe, and it's not 100% ideal, and it's not exactly the way we want it, but yes, it is safer than other cities. But what I've noticed in the last few years is that I've seen a lot of women um, stand up for themselves a lot in public spaces. Like, I often see very, very young girls, like 15, 16-year-old girls, taking on these mushtandas, or taking on the cops and being like, how dare you do that, how dare you do that, no, I'm not moving from here till you apologize. And I've seen a lot of these scenes all over the place, and I just feel so happy, because I didn't see this a few years ago. Like, women would be told to, just ignore and quietly walk away if something happens. But now, many, many young girls are not just taking a stand for themselves, but also for their guy friends. I recently saw a very young girl shouting at a cop who was like uh, maybe 12 inches taller than her, and saying, how dare you hit my friend? How dare you hit my friend? And the friend was a boy. So I've seen a lot of changes in girls and women, standing up for themselves.
Yeah, I completely echo that. That I think that what I definitely see is that street harassment and gender-based violence in different spaces, across spaces, and if I were to stick to just street harassment and violence against persons, women, in public spaces, not considered a joke anymore. It's treated with seriousness in our own bodies to begin with, and we demand that from everyone else we engage with. I don't see people just ignoring it or wanting to speak about it, or knowing that there was a sense of wrong, and knowing that you're not alone. That I think that, and having said that, there are countless of people who are still feeling alone in this very second, as I say it. But overall, I feel like there is a knowing that victim blame comes with this, and it wasn't my fault, and I never asked for it, if I can bring that in right now. Or there is a knowing that that this is a violation, and I deserve to be able to speak about it, or that one day I will speak about it. But it's not just dismissed, it's not normalized. I feel like that's a shift. And then on the sadder side, there is, of course, CCTV cameras wherever we go, and there's that kind of presence, and this assumption around this is what makes place safe. Yeah, and it's definitely not from a public infrastructure perspective, but from a public awareness perspective. It's definitely from once being an invisible non-issue to a foregrounded issue, including victim blame. So I feel like these are the shifts that we can see. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Though it also made me think that while each of you are talking from your vantage points and from the experience of very specific cities in which you have experienced public space and these issues, um, there's so much, so much to do, because I was thinking of the some of the field work I've done in Agra, and I've grown up in Agra, and victim blaming, street harassment, still commonplace, still still not as much of an issue. It's still not lit for that matter, or women are still not speaking up. I mean, I was doing interviews at police stations, and I got quite nasty comments by policemen, and the things they said about कि ये तो छीटा मारना है, इसमें कौन क्यों कंप्लेंट लिखवा रहे हैं, लड़की ने ही कुछ लिफ्ट दी होती है इसलिए, hearing things like that. Not, and this was like 2 years ago. So we have so much, so much to do, still do and move. Any other question?
No, I just wanted to say that I totally agree that there's so much to do, but at the same time, there are many more women walking with an awareness that, this is wrong. And knowing that I can talk to someone. I feel like that is a subtle, I don't know, there's no statistic to prove this, but that's a climate that I can experience, that, even what Neha has shared around seeing somebody call it out on the streets is very real. Yeah. Yeah. And having said that, I'm aware of every schoolgirl who's walking with that hunched back and with her elbows out. That's also very visible to me. But also just looking beyond, when we see so many organizations in India right now, and in rural India, when I see Kriya's work, or when I see different sequin, there's so much around playing outside and football and mobility related. So it's also a larger shift, right? Like there's so much emphasis even from funding to look at how there is a shift around mobility and emphasizing women's mobility and relationship with public spaces. So that's also a way of looking at a shift broadly.
Yeah, there is a discursive policy shift also, for sure. Sorry, Neha, you were about to come in. Were you? No, okay.
Nidhi has their hand raised for a long time. Can we go with Nidhi first and then Shakti?
Please, go ahead. Nidhi, you can unmute yourself and voice over your question. Okay, I don't know if it's a tech issue. Shakti, do you want to unmute yourself and voice over your question? The host needs to give permission. Sorry. Can we do that, Mallika?
Am I audible?
Yes.
Hi, thank you for holding this space, and I'm glad to have this conversation. I wanted to ask whether whenever you do these events, do you follow up with your participants if they've reached back home safely? And if yes, then how do you manage to do it? Thank you.
For us, we have a WhatsApp group. So everybody just messages themselves that we've reached. Transportation back home is another. It's a thesis in itself, because Delhi speaks of absolutely no public transport after a certain time. It's all and that also like brings many questions of accessibility, because then it's up to cabs and autos, and then who can afford it and who cannot, and who, all sorts of questions come up. But those of us who do gather, we just message, that we tell each other, message when you get home, as this is the thing that is said all the time. घर पहुंच के मैसेज कर देना, तो ब्यूटीफुली सब लोग घर पहुंच के मैसेज कर देते हैं. Many times people are dropped back, and there are carpools and stuff like that. So yeah.
There's also an option to just crash at each other's place for the night. Because the city is not friendly. We are not changing the infrastructure. Neha?
Same. So we have a WhatsApp group, and usually everybody's taken pictures. So mostly while on the way back, they're sharing pictures, and then everybody's hearting the pictures and saying, "Oh my God," and "Oh, this photo is so nice." So उसी में सफर कट जाता है, and we get to know कि लोग घर पहुंच चुके हैं. And obviously Mumbai में you get auto rickshaws, you get Ola, Uber, anything that you want at any point of day or night. So it's not such a big issue. But still, everybody's in touch on the WhatsApp group.
I'm kind of also because again there have been different kinds of organizing, and when with Meet to Sleep, because it also rests on partner organizations and their communities. So every partner organization has that process of figuring out how the community members are reaching home, and every organization determines that. But when it's locally done in Bangalore, then and again, I can't speak for Meet to Sleep because it's also happening in the daytime, so it's not carrying. Going home does not carry the same mood as going home at midnight in terms of what one must navigate. But I'm also reminded of a time when somebody left home after coming, right? Like it was a listening circle, and yeah, and she spoke of yeah, it became a moment in which she could name what was happening at home, and that home wasn't safe. So I just want to use this moment to reverse the idea of home, and that became a way for her to leave home. That moment became a way, that day she left that home. So just bringing that in also between the public and the private, and but broadly speaking, in all the past actions, when they've been about walking and at night, then yes, then we do exchange messages. But yeah, again, I'll stop now. Yeah.
But that's such an important idea, right? That we are talking about access to public space, but the private is not that safe either. Rosma, can you unmute Nidhi if Nidhi wants to go next?
I can't actually. It says ask Nidhi to unmute. That's all it says. I mean, Nidhi, can you try again?
Or maybe Nidhi can type her question.
If it's not working, then
I mean,
that's
Shakti was able to ask. I don't know what's the issue with
yeah.
Nidhi's.
Okay, Nidhi, just maybe you can drop a message in the chat and we'll take it up. But we're also very close to the closing time. It's dinner time. So, any other thoughts, any last thoughts, comments while we wait for more questions to come in that anyone would like to reflect on up and or reflect on this conversation?
Can I go?
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, I had a question. I mean, it's more
Go.
like, I have been associated with Women Walk at Midnight for a while, and we plan and facilitate things uh every month, like Mallika said, we have been organizing, facilitating all these walks around the city. So there is this one issue that I mean, yeah, this is a question to all the four of you. We constantly, we have this trouble with figuring out what really is the problem, because every month we plan 2 3 walks and we end up having one or two, because people, like women, don't show up. And even if they do, it's just 2 3 women. And in places like Paharganj or Faridabad or somewhere in East Delhi, where it's dark, it's not that lit, like while you compare it to South Delhi, or uh, like all these posh areas, if you compare it with that, then not a lot of women come forward and like register for the walks. And there is this constant confusion that what could be the problem. Is it the logistics that metro closes down by 11, or 10:30, 11, and then there is this like, so this is what we have reflected on so far, that maybe this is a logistical problem where women fear how they would come back. But at the same time, we have a solution for that as well, because we have women who live alone in they have their own rooms, they have vehicles, like we have a place where we can, like, tell them, oh, you can have a sleepover after the walk, and you can go back home the next morning and stuff like that. And even then, even when people register, like I think Neha mentioned, even if like 20 people register, only 10 show up. In our case, sometimes 10 people register and only 2 3 show up, and like only 2 3 confirm that they'll come. And when that happens, we cannot walk like a space in Paharganj, because it's not that safe. So we, like, I was wondering, what do you think could be the reason? Why don't women, like, show up? Is this the fear? Is this logistics? Is this maybe there is a curfew at home? Or maybe all of these?
I think it's all of it, no?
Yeah, actually, I don't think it has, um, because we are talking about people registering and then not coming. We are not actually saying that, I mean, Delhi is a monster city. There are so many cities in this city that it's very, very difficult to catch, to truly understand why this happened and why that happened. Um, Firstly, I don't think it has so much to do with light in the night. There have been, because when we went to Paharganj, finally we realized that it's hyperlit. So it isn't darkness that is not making people come. I feel like there's two things. One, I think life takes over in spite of your best intentions. And the second thing, which I say, and I know this can sound a bit uh, problematic or controversial, but sometimes I feel a lot of people, and this is not to do with women or walking or loitering or anything, but sometimes I feel like the people want to be a part of something, but actually it takes them very, very long to actually become a part of it. So the idea appeals, but the action requires a lot more time. And what I think people don't realize many times is that when you register for something, when you sign up, you are saying, you are signaling to the people who are, to others who want to do this, that yes, I'm available. My solidarity, my body, my being, my presence is going to be there. And when you don't show up without any information, even, actually, it's like this. It's like many times then that action cannot happen, because there's parameters to that action happening. And I feel like maybe sometimes people are not mindful of this. So either you don't register, or you don't, or you inform, or whatever else it is. And generally my feeling is, when you are not charging money for something, uh, and this is even in theater shows, it's in things that we see, when things are a bit free, then I think maybe how you show up for it, or how much you show up for it, this shifts in how people participate.
Just to add to that, like, I completely agree that life takes over, especially when it's a midnight walk, because you might be really excited at 2 p.m., but by the time it's 11 p.m. and you're like, now I have to go for the walk. You're about to sleep, so you're like, oh, I'll just not go. Secondly, I think the reason is what Mallika had said earlier, ki there's always this nagging question na कि मेरे walk करने से क्या बदल जाएगा यार दुनिया में. And तीसरा, which I've forgotten. Because most of our, sessions are not really structured, and people are very used to having very structured things. So it can also be little unnerving, like what is going to happen, what are we going to do, what is the plan? And when you say like there's no real plan, I mean, it's just that, we'll just start and then we'll see how it goes. So it sometimes it can dissuade some people, I think.
I also think that fear is very real, that somebody is on the brink of coming, and fear is very real because it's not just about it is, of course, somebody's time, but for another person, they've just never walked alone. And there are too many of us who've never done that, who've never been allowed to do that, who've had to lie to do that. So, or who've had to, so that reality is very much present as well in somebody wanting to, desiring to, and gradually being able to, even for themselves. Yeah.
But this question also takes me back to the idea of long-term collectives, right? And when you're this close to organizing it, you see this as a challenge, but when you have some distance, you also see that it's okay. पहाड़गंज में अगर 2-4 लोग ही आए, लेकिन पहाड़गंज में walk हुई, and maybe this opens up the possibility of having another one in the future. And that is why having multitudes of this, multiple walks and loitering sessions and sleeping sessions and haha sessions, having multitudes of that become important. And that bit, right, about translating your thought into action, navigating your fear, it's all of everyone is on a journey of all of that, right? And with that, we're out of time, and hopefully we can have another chat sometime in the future. But any last thoughts?
Somebody, Nidhi, has asked something, so maybe we can just respond to that as the last thought. It's a nice question.
Yeah, whoever wants to take that up. How do we go from, instead of unlearning at this age, how do we learn in future generations, younger generations? How do we learn differently?
I just like to share. So we have this loiterer called Archana Patel, and she used to bring her not 4, 5, maybe 5, 6-year-old son with her, because there was nowhere else to, leave him. So he used to come with us for the loitering sessions, and now he's a grown boy. And, he is like such a hardcore feminist. And recently she was telling me that he was playing cricket with his guy friends, and there was a girl walking around, wearing what is considered scandalous. And then somebody commented, and then he immediately went and was like, no, she has a right to wear whatever the hell she wants. Who are you to say anything to her? And he really stood up for her. And she was like so happy. And he said, I'm as much a loiterer as you, because you've been taking me for all the loiterings, and I've been hearing all you women talk about feminism and everything. So yeah, things like that do happen.
Yeah, I got an email about a month ago from somebody who, Neha, who was then 10 years old, and she said, I'm in college now. No, she must have been, she must have been 10 or 11, but she says she's in college now, and she was with her mom at Meet to Sleep. And her mom, Biji, had, left her reflection in the 2016 or 2015 Meet to Sleep, saying, when my little, my Nia was asking questions such as, wondering why are these adults talking about sleep? And she said, I hope that when she grows up, when she's a young Indian woman, she can continue to ask, why are we talking about sleep in the first place, and it should be normal. So yeah, I just triggered that thought and memory in terms of making it normal. And I love it when I see mothers and daughters just passing by and stopping to say what's going on, because that visual, even like in the performativity in the experience, we're also creating a visual together, whether those visuals float on Instagram as also a space, a digital space, or in public spaces under open skies themselves. It is somebody is also witnessing that moment, and for them, it becomes a moment of saying this is real right now. I wanted to break one quick rule. I just wanted to give a shout out for the solidarity that we've experienced from girls at dhabas and from Sadia, and also building Meet to Sleep. And yeah, I just saw a message from Nida saying that they're watching this right now. So I just felt like dropping that in. Yeah.
Actually, I feel like if we just, not just daughters, and I would say that if children are raised with a whole lot of love, and I can't insist on that enough. And if they are raised knowing that no matter what, there is love, then a lot of things are avoided. A lot of violence gets avoided. And when the violence happens, there are ways and methods and spaces that can hold it and can deal with it. So we don't walk around traumatized and always fearful, and we gain muscle and strength to be able to say back, answer back, talk back, stand up, question, because we know that we are not wrong because we have been told that. So I feel like if that can happen, then हमारा काम थोड़ा आसान हो जाएगा, चलने का, लॉइटरिंग का, सोने का, खड़े होने का.
Yeah. Okay, on that beautiful note, we are way over time. So thank you for staying over time, to the speakers for taking out the time for having this beautiful and deep conversation, and I hope we can have many more. And to everyone who joined and